By night we cannot climb. A second point in which, to my mind, Dante alludes to reincarnation is that relating to the strange law of purgatory that says by night we cannot climb. When Dante leaves hell it is night, and in fact he sees the stars, as the celebrated last verse of the first cantica recites, and so we emerged to once again see the stars. Then, after a series of vicissitudes, dawn arrives and Dante begins, guided always by Virgil, the laborious ascent of this mountain, so high that he can't even see the top. It is not possible to reach it in one day. Night will come 3 times, and 3 times Dante will fall asleep. The descriptions of the atmospheres of the dawns and sunsets are always very beautiful, and full of allegory and symbol are the accounts of the 3 dreams, but so far nothing strange. Strange instead is the fact that as soon as the sun sets, it is no longer possible to move on. It is, obviously, a law invented by Dante. Nevertheless, when the troubadour Sordello speaks to him, he pretends to be amazed, and just to underline the strangeness of the thing, has Virgil say, "How is that?" he was asked. "Is it that he who tried to climb by night would be impeded by others, or by his own lack of power?" Page 127. And good Sordello, as his finger traced along the ground, said, "Once the sun has set, then, look, even this line cannot be crossed. And not that anything except the dark of night prevents your climbing up. It is the night itself that implicates your will. Once darkness falls, one can indeed retreat below and wander aimlessly about the slopes, while the horizon has enclosed the day." Purgatory 7, 49 to 60. The critics read there, rightly, an allegorical meaning that would be the following: the soul cannot ascend towards the good without the light of God, and they inform us that this law conforms to the gospel. You walk while you have the light, so that the darkness not overtake you. However, what is not said is that in this and in other passages of John's Gospel, for example in the one which Jesus says, "We must do the works of him who sent me while it is day," then night comes when nobody can act. Night always signifies death, that indeed can overtake us and stop anyone, including Jesus, from acting. In the Gospel, it would have made no sense to interpret the light of day as light of God or divine grace. If it was this, why should it ever fail? Or how is it possible that Jesus might think of losing it? And why should the absence of grace overtake us? And it is also useless to pose all these questions from the moment that nothing puts in doubt that in the Gospel the lessening of the light of day symbolizes death. The problem is posed in the comedy instead, where, despite the obvious references to Gospel passages, the allusion to death leads to absurdities. Then we need to ask ourselves, why has Dante ever wanted to be inspired by the Gospel passages and then distort the, page 128, meaning? Because he had never introduced the possibility from the start for the ascent to last for more days, and falling asleep to narrate his dreams, to see the sun rise and set, are all things that he would have been able to do without such an impediment. A further strangeness lies in the fact that this law presides only in purgatory, not in hell, where Dante even spent 2 nights. If it represents grace, Dante needed it, indeed, also to cross through hell. In short, we will need to find a reply to all these perplexities, although I realise that it is an extremely complex and difficult passage. My hypothesis is that the law by which by night we cannot climb alludes to reincarnation. First, there will be opportunity to ask ourselves what purgatory represents. Regarding this second kingdom, recently instituted in Dante's time, I will deal with further on. From the many differences between the official and the imagined in the comedy, I will quote just one. While the church thought of it as a temporary hell, ruled by the devil, with souls that burn in fire, Dante's is inhabited by angels and is essentially earthly. On this the sun rises and sets. The function of purgatory is that of purification of the soul. For the Catholic Church, and specifically Catholic because no other Christian church has ever accepted the idea of purgatory, such purification happens after death in purgatory, end of. There is no purgatory in any of the reincarnation doctrines, but this doesn't mean that there is no purification of the soul. That is, better still, a fundamental passage. Not only salvation, but freedom can be obtained only when the soul is completely pure. The difference is that for the Cathars, purification is performed while one is alive, and this means that purgatory, that is, the place where the necessary purification happens, can only be on earth. And in Dante, as we have seen, purgatory is an earthly realm, at the ends of the then inhabited earth, but worldly. The expression on earth could also be significant when Dante says the good Sordello as his finger traced along the ground. Page 129. Through numerous lives. If this had been Dante's conviction, how could he have been able to express it, given that the simplest way was made impossible for him? How could he have reconciled the idea of a path accomplished through several lives with the image of the Dante character who climbs the mountain in the first person? Perhaps the best solution might be that of making the climb days longer, implying through both the gospel reference and what was already written in the banquet, where he compared the life of man to the daylight hours from dawn to dusk, that the coming of night corresponds to death. There is a tercet that seems to confirm this hypothesis. To pass the night, Dante is conducted to the Valley of the Princes, consisting of a hollow that is oddly called a womb. Thitherward, said that shade, will we repair, for of itself the hillside makes a lap, and there for the new day will we await. Purgatory 7, 67 to 69.